smartest people, the biggest ideas.
John, come on up here. John Howe, whose work will speak for itself. As he talks, watch the screen.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here in Canada again. It's been a while. So I'm here to talk about what I do, which, in light of everything I've heard, is a fairly frivolous activity. I make pictures, and I try to make my living doing that. I think that illustrators should actually be issued with a restraining order forbidding them to actually talk about what they do, because their pictures should be doing the talking and not them. Unfortunately, my pictures don't have any audio, so I'm here to fill in that gap. Why don't more people draw? How many people in the audience actually draw? Quite a few. That's more than the average. Now my whole argument has just fallen to the ground. But generally, you must be a very exceptional bunch, because generally about 5% of the population actually draws, which is quite strange, because we all used to draw. We could all draw until we were 5 or 6. We could all do it. But now most of us can't. And I think that part of it is because we live in a permanent state of disequilibrium, if you like. We spend many, many years in school learning how to write and learning how to read. Because we live in a literate society where our knowledge obviously is transmitted by reading and by writing, our eye is an interesting link to the world outside. The back of the eye is lined with batons and cones. I'm sure most of you have heard this before. And the batons are what receive the information basically from a form of tunnel vision. It's what we use to focus. It's what we use to see precise things. And the cones are the part of the eye that we use for peripheral vision. They're the instruments that allow us to see everything in a glance, but nothing is really focused. And the part of the eye that we use to write is hooked up to the left sides of our brains, which is, commonly known as the masculine, intellectual, reasoning side. And the cones are hooked up to the intuitive side, and otherwise known also as the feminine side, and the side that lets us feel things rather than thinking them. The inescapable fact is that when you write, you are focused on what your pen is doing, and you're not seeing the rest of the page that you're writing. There's no point. You have a fixed, or fairly fixed, distance between what you're doing and your eyes, and that's going straight through the left side of your brain to your reasoning, lineal, temporal part. And if you give a drawing instrument, for example, a pencil, to someone who does not draw and ask them, can you please hold it the way you would to draw a picture? They'll pick it up in exactly the same way as they would to write. So therefore, unbeknownst to them, they are locking themselves into a system which will absolutely prohibit them from drawing anything, because you cannot draw a picture if you are looking at the point of your pencil, if you're not seeing the rest of what's around it, if you're not seeing the whole image at the same time. You cannot even draw in a very large area because your hand is anchored to the page and you have to shift it in order to draw something more. So, of course you can't draw. It's impossible. So a sort of basic hand hygiene would be in order for people to actually learn how to draw. Now, the whole idea about drawing, and I've actually brought something along here, which is the equipment you will need, which you can rush out and buy, which is one of the earliest laptops. Now, it has it's widescreen, it's portable, it's the latest model from Dale Rowney. It comes with the software, Pencil 4B, which I just recently upgraded to from 3B. And you all know the original program, HB. I'm sure you've seen that before. There's more software. It has a program called Eraser, which is very interesting. And I recently upgraded to Needable from the company's website. It has a capacity of about 1 gigabyte of grayscale images at 300 dpi. So that's, fairly reasonable for a low-tech instrument like this. It has a modem, which has a direct hookup, planetary, to whatever you got in front of you to draw. You've got either a fiber optic link to what you can see, or a rather more personal link to what's in there. The download, of course, depends on your connection. It's either fast or it's slow. It really depends. It's got an automatic backup. It never crashes. And if you buy one, you will have an automatic membership in the Sketchbook Appreciation Club, of which I am the founding member and actually only member. So I think that it's also possible to achieve a form of communion with what you see, and more importantly, to achieve a form of understanding. Because if something moves you, there's a reason for it. And if you can spend the time trying to transcribe that reason, then I think you can gain a better understanding of not only what the thing is, but also what has suddenly pushed you to receive something from it. Because I know we weren't allowed any questions, I actually prepared a whole Q&A myself. So I could ask the questions and answer them too. Why do you do fantasy art? And this has the underlying subtext. Why don't you do something useful? Why don't you turn your talent to something, to a current issue, to something where you could make a difference, to something where you'd be in tune with what people are preoccupied with? But I hope, and I truly believe, that mythology and that legend are the arena where humanity has been fighting most of its prolonged battles and struggles ever since we started to think about why we were on this planet. And I find that making fantasy means that I have to distill reality. So that means I have to understand what reality is all about in order to make fantasy in any way convincing and real. And it has opened my eyes to real things in a way that I never imagined possible. And it's become now the only thing I know how to do. So I'm too old to change my ways and make amends. Thank you.
Get the latest Idealist news, presenter information, and watch streaming video at www.ideacityonline.com.